I was in a really screwed up place as a teenager. Nerdy was in my genes. My brother and I were those child prodigies who couldn't seem to connect with people. Fat was in my genes too. I was just that side of chubby where people don't feel bad for saying it. Already, I was at a huge disadvantage for the atmosphere of a small town high school. I was sexually abused as a kid and had PTSD from it, and depression was starting to come in too. When I hit high school, we got a new band teacher. He was young and cute. The best part was, he was nice to me. He was never anything but professional. If he had to give a lesson to a female student, he made sure more than one was there. He never got more than 3 feet close to someone. But being lonely and looking desperately for a way out of the rut I was living in, I fell in love with the first person to show me kindness. I started following this man around like a puppy. I joined every extracurricular band activity I could. I don't regret that part. I had a crazy fun time in pep band. I could outscream a team of cheerleaders by myself. But that's a story for another day. I was always the last one to head out, just so I could see his face. I think the only reason he didn't have me removed from band was that I was a good student. I led my section after teaching myself to play baritone, and he called me his logistics girl for all set up and tear down. Unfortunately for the poor guy, I only lived 2 doors up from the high school. When I saw he was working late, I'd go ride my bike in the parking lot, just happening to conveniently be there when he got out. I tried to be truthful. A lot of times I was upset, and I tried to get him to understand that. But I realize now that it was pretty damn transparent. My crush was huge, could probably be seen from space. Now, as a grown-up, I can only imagine how uncomfortable I must have made this man feel. I was so unprofessional, and teachers really had to worry about that. I wonder if I made him feel unsafe. I knew where he lived, but I was never dumb enough to go there. He's since moved to another side of the country, but I still really hate myself for what I did. I can't help but wonder to this day whether I was a factor of making him leave. I mean, I didn't think I was that annoying, but hey, I guess I'll never know just how much I affected him. I worry some days that he'll come back and see me. I want to run up and apologize to him, but I think, realistically, I'll just find the nearest hole to jump into. Don't let the place you're at affect the safety of others. Please. There is this one man I cannot stop thinking about. I met him a 1.5 years ago. He's an artist, and I look up all the art galleries in this area to see if he is exhibiting his work in any of them. I look up art events he's going to on his social media and go so I can bump into him. I gather information about him without his knowledge. I know his age, where he came from, who his family is, where he went to high school, college, and grad school. I know he was a 4.0 student in college, and I've scoured the internet for everything on him, because he's known in my city as an artist. He's a beautiful human being. He's deep, quiet, totally sexy, starving artist to a T. His voice, his body language, his eyes, blue. His arms are muscular, but not disgustingly buff. It makes me mad. When I do see him, I just get so quiet. I don't know what happens. I'm completely not myself. He affects me so strongly. From 1 to 10, 1 being mild and 10 being very, how stalker am I? Can any of you relate? My life has always been a mess, and then I found her profile on the internet. On the outside, she was a lot like me. Nicknames, birthplace, age, sign, birthday, hobbies, tastes, personality. Except she had everything I wish I had. Everything that made me look for someone who could save me. Then, I realized I had known her before. Everything was coincidental. I was amazed. We exchanged messages. It was okay, but it meant a lot more to me than it did to her. To put it simply, facts about myself reminded me of her, so I kept going back to her. I was young. I stalked because I didn't know what I was doing or how harmful it could be. Before I knew it, it had turned into a habit. The more I stalked, the harder it was to let go. The more I felt like I needed it. Letting go is so difficult, even though I know how much I need it. I've been stuck for all of my teenage years. It has been 4 or 5 years. I can't grow up and let it go, but she did, and this only makes me more jealous. When I'm at a low, I feel like stalking. I need it like a drug. I become depressed if I don't. I've been struggling. When I'm at a high, I may go for months without stalking. This is when I am the most vulnerable, because I forget how much effort I had to make not to stalk her. And then I give in, and I am sucked into the whirlpool again. My mind always goes back to her. I need help. I don't want to give up on me for her, but therapy isn't an option where I live. I know it isn't about her anymore. It's about my issues, and she's the unlucky object of my frustrations. But what to do if my heart forgets this from time to time? I've always been ashamed to admit this, but I feel I need to. I was in year 9. I was about 14 and I started to fall in love with my Spanish teacher. Let's call her Mrs. J. She was really lovely to me before she found out I liked her. I remember once my friend and I both forgot our books. My friend got detention, but Mrs. J just said to me, "Aw, you're so forgetful. Maybe I'll have to make you a little holder for your book and then you will always remember." I think about her all the time, write about her in my wee diaries, and she'd make my heart jolt every time I thought about her. I'm a girl too, and she was my first real intense feeling. Looking back, I wasn't in love. I was infatuated. She had obvious favorites, and she was always nice to me. I remember just wanting her to know how important she was to me, and how much I loved her. I didn't want her to ever forget me, so I thought by going out of my way to be noticed, she'd always remember me. The habit stuck, and I realize now I wish she didn't remember. I wish I didn't tell her. Then we could have kept our nice teacher-student relationship. I ended up telling her about how I felt. Big mistake. We had these year 13 slaves for a day. You know, just a fundraising kind of thing. You could be like, "Slave, go and hug that guy over there." And they'd do it. It raised money for something. I got my best friend's slave to tell her. She had a very cold response, which was a change from the nice teacher I had. That day in Spanish, she kept away from me and gave me dirty looks. I felt awkward and nervous. I still needed to talk to her in some way, but I was too afraid. So I started to follow her around, seek attention from her with my friends, wait for her in the corridors, watch her, and write her love letters. I'm quite a quirky, jumpy person, so I wasn't very subtle either. I was such a stupid kid. My best friends and I took photos of her once and called her house. That really weirded her out, which was fair enough. I only took one picture that day, but felt so awful and creepy I deleted it right that second and never did anything like it again. I added her daughter on Facebook for some odd reason too. I have honestly no idea why. I think it was a spur of the moment, big mistake. I had no bad intentions. I wouldn't hurt a fly. I was very silly. The actions, although they hurt and I couldn't stop, also became a part of my friendship with my best friend. I remember watching her as I was on the ground, hiding, and she came up to me and said, "What are you doing?" And I didn't know what to say, so I said, looking for spiders." She said, "No, you're harassing me." My friend still reminds me of this stupid looking for spiders excuse now and laughs about it with me, like private jokes. Mrs. J went and stood by the bridge, looking really angry with me. I went up to her and said, "Are you angry at me now, or annoyed?" She replied, "What do you think? I've been annoyed for a long time. I know this is all some joke to you." I almost burst into tears and said it wasn't a joke. She asked me what it was then, and I just stood there scared. She said, in a concerned, almost anxious tone, "I mean what I say. I don't like this. I can't say what you want to hear. It's not right. I'm old enough to be your mom. My husband's all for coming down here and getting you expelled." My heart exploded into a million pieces. Her husband, the one she loves, not me. They'd team up and take me away from all of my friends. She said, "You'll move on. You'll get girlfriends and stuff. You'll forget me." What got to me the most was her saying she didn't even want to leave her classroom in case I was there watching her. That made me feel like a criminal, a creep, a stalker. I was just a kid and so deep. I was so infatuated. She then sent me to the counselor. I could tell she was trying to be nice, just not doing it well. Mrs. J got so sick of it. She'd ignore me and complain about me. She'd see me in the corridors and give me nasty glares. A couple of times I actually burst into tears when she did that. I never went to her house or anything extreme, but I was stalking her around school for a year. It was like I needed to, because I was so hooked on her. I wanted her to talk to me and make it better. My mom emailed her once trying to explain. She said she thinks I'm a lovely girl and she holds no grudges against me. It's just that she's a professional who treats her students equally. By night at home, I'd cry myself to sleep. Every night for a whole year. My eyes were like little puffy cakes. But I can see why Mrs. J thought I was joking. My friends and I found humor in the pain. If only to turn it into something else, to take something good from all the hurting. Once they locked me in her block and guarded the doors just for a laugh. They'd go and I'd chase them. I loved my friends, but secretly I was hurting, whereas they all found it amusing, but still helped me out and felt sorry for me. They were perfect friends. I became incredibly depressed, confused, ashamed, and heartbroken. My letters weren't at all freaky. They were apologetic and sweet, but they were obsessive, you could say. I tried to show her I could stop and be mature, but I kept making mistakes. I started self-harming and I completely changed. Before I was a happy, bubbly kid. But after all of this, I cried myself to sleep, tried suicide, worried constantly, and hated myself. I had a cut across my neck once that she saw. That must have scared her to death. She ended up banning me from various blocks around the school. The head of the school, Mr. M, was horrible. He yelled at me and said I was a stalker, and no one wants to hear my stupid harassment. I was already banned from her block, and I was banned from another block after that too. I sat there crying and crying with my best friend while she tried to make me laugh. It broke my heart to hear my counselor say, "She doesn't want you around. She doesn't want to see you, so you can't go into these areas." My counselor was a lovely woman. She was just trying to help me see that this wasn't going to work. She even wrote me a letter saying how strong I was, which I still have to this day. But when she let out the truth, I was hurting. I know I was wrong, but I felt like a criminal and a victim all in one. I wrote her a really long email, and by long I mean about 15 paragraphs. It was just me venting about how sorry I was and how much I cared for her. From this action, I was banned from everywhere except one room. I was crushed. The school told me that if I stayed in this room for 3 weeks, then I could come back to school and everything would be normal. They lied. I was secretly expelled the whole time. They just didn't want to kick me while I was down. My biggest fear, leaving all of my friends and never seeing Mrs. J again, came true. And for 3 weeks, I didn't even know. My ex-girlfriend came back with me for those 3 to 4 weeks, and I was moving on from Mrs. J and focusing on my girlfriend. But then Mrs. J walked past the only area I was allowed in, and so I ran closer to her, only because I knew I'd never see her again. My girlfriend broke up with me because she thought I loved her, which wasn't true anymore. I threw my girlfriend away and I still regret that. I adored her, and she made those last few weeks bearable. I ran away from school and wanted to throw myself in front of a car, but I stood there, watching them until some teachers found me. I'd attempt to hang myself after school, put plastic bags over my head, and on the very last day of school, I was so desperate and messed up, I had a breakdown in Mrs. J's block. I was lightly, not loudly crying, and I just felt so confused. I was moving my pen along her office door, and another teacher opened it and had a word with me. I started panicking when she went to close the door because I knew she was closing the door to my last chance of fixing things with this teacher. I lost it. I remember walking into her classroom and seeing her cardi on the chair and touching it angrily, full of hurt. I was begging for her not to do this to me, although she never saw me. She was in the other room the whole time, but probably heard enough. I needed closure. I was in so much pain. I just went crazy for that moment in her block. I just couldn't handle it anymore. Either way, it was too late. I was asked to leave the school. The thing that messed me up the most is how I heard that she'd sue the school if they didn't kick me out. She said to someone, "What if she hurts my daughter? What if this love turns to hate and she turns on me or my family?" That has never left me. I wouldn't hurt anyone. I'm not a psycho. I was a 14-year-old girl and I didn't understand my feelings. I didn't know how to handle them. I'd never let it go this far again. I was learning. Looking back, it was like I was just a newborn into the whole crushes and feelings thing. I don't understand how she didn't understand. She was a kid once too. I'd never hurt her. Knowing that she sees me as some scary stalker has stuck with me 3 years and I still cry about it now. I wish she never said that because I'll never get over it. I've never been the same since. It was odd because later down the year, I think I just got so used to the unrequited love, I didn't know how to let it go, even though my heart could have. If it repeated now, I could walk away and not do these things. I've had these feelings again, but not acted upon them because they mean nothing. I was 14, I just didn't know how to handle it. I confused it with love. I got into a bad habit. I still worry about it now over a year later. It's hard to live with myself. This has ruined my life. I just don't want to be seen as a creepy stalker, but I sure feel like one. I can't even watch stalker movies or anything because I feel like that's who I was. It hurts so much and really messed me up, and being feared just feels like an eternal punishment. Another thing about this that twirls my mind into ruins is that she wasn't exactly an attractive woman. She looked as old as she was. This may sound narcissistic, so forgive me if it does, but I wasn't ugly, and as the years grew on without the situation and without the school, people often started to see me as a stunning or beautiful girl, like an evolution. It is irrelevant, but it also doesn't make any sense at all. I am in so much confusion. I wish I could meet someone else who had been through this too. But not even on here, no one's story seems as freaky as mine. Everyone gets a friendship with their teacher. If I never told Mrs. J, maybe we could have gotten along like we used to. Maybe if everyone on here did what I did, they would have got less and less. I ruined it for myself and it hurt. At my new school, the headmaster from my old school actually came up to me and said he still ponders over whether or not I was treated fairly, and that he was sorry, which is lovely to know someone cared.